New Westminster Veterans Oral History Project. Today's date is December 3rd, 2001. The interviewee is Mr. Russell Bone with the RCAF. Mr. Bone, what is your full name?
Russell John Bone.
And your date and place of birth?
I was born in Eston, Saskatchewan on September the 11th, 1922.
Okay, and what is your marital status?
I'm married.
And your wife's maiden name?
Her maiden name was Lavalley.
Right, and her first name?
Diane.
Diane Lavalley. Do you have any children?
Yes, I do. I have 4 children and 3 stepchildren.
7 in total.
7 in total. Yeah.
So where were your parents from?
My father came from a little place called Maybole, just outside of Glasgow in Scotland.
Okay.
And my mother came from the state of Iowa in the USA.
Oh, okay. And they made it to Saskatchewan.
Well, my father came over from Scotland in 1912, and at that same year, my mother's family emigrated to the same part of Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She was just quite a young girl at the time. In fact, she went to the same country. I went to the same country school as she did.
Oh, really?
In Saskatchewan, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, how did you get to the residence that you're at now?
I moved here to the Lower Mainland in 1972, and I lived in New Westminster for several years. In fact, 20-some years, and then we sold our house there and bought this townhouse in 1982.
1982.
Yeah.
And what is your current address?
Townhouse number 129, 13895, 102nd Avenue, Surrey.
102nd Avenue. Okay. So, what branch of the armed forces were you enrolled in?
Well, I was with the Royal Canadian Air Force,
Mm-hmm.
what was known as the 2nd Tactical Air Force. We traveled with the Army.
Oh, okay. I see. And what was your rank and position?
I was a leading aircraftsman, LAC. I actually got corporal's pay because after a certain length of time, you automatically got your corporal stripes, but there was no room for any more corporals, so that they called it the shadow roster, and we got paid corporal's pay, but we stayed LAC.
Oh, I see.
And I was an armorer, and we serviced in all the armament on the aircraft.
Okay. Okay. When did you enroll in the RCAF?
July 1941.
And was that in Saskatoon?
In Saskatoon.
In Saskatoon,
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a recruiting office.
Right. And how did your family feel about that?
Well, there were things they'd have rather had me do, let's put it that way. But
Yeah.
Everybody, lots of people were going, so.
Right.
And in the end, of course, they were proud of what we'd done. My brother was in the service too, one of my oldest brothers.
Right. Right.
But at the time, of course, it's always tough on a mother to see the sons going to the war.
Did you enroll with friends or on your own?
No, just on my own.
And was there a reason for going with the RCAF?
Well, I had an application in with the Navy and an application in with the Air Force. And of course, you automatically got called to the Army.
Awesome.
So the Air Force called first, so I went with them. If the Navy had called first, I probably went with them.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So how many years of service did you complete?
4 years.
4 years. And so when were you discharged?
August 1945.
And that was in Saskatoon
In
as well?
Regina. We got discharged in Regina.
Oh, okay. Okay. So when you heard that Canada had declared war on Germany, how did you feel?
Well, of course, being at that time, I would be 17 then. we were always concerned about something like that, and of course right away you start, seeing pictures of different things, and you sort of get the urge to get into it yourself.
You do, eh?
Yeah.
Just for the adventures?
I think mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, at 17 or 18, that'd probably be as big a reason as any is get into the kind of the excitement of it.
Right. You never thought you'd get hurt or
Oh
anything?
no, that's somebody else. That's somebody else's fate, not yours.
That's the way it goes, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. So, where did you get your training? And how much? How long?
Well, I got caught up in a strange situation. Well, it wasn't strange. It was quite common for the Air Force. Of course, everybody wanted to be a pilot. So I put down my preference as a pilot. So when they called me up, they said, well, there's no room for pilots just now. So the thing to do is just join up as a general duties. And then once you get in, then you can remuster. They painted all a big picture, of course, which is a kind of a falsity. Anyway, I joined up as a GD, and I wound up doing many things in mess hall, all sorts of things. And then somebody said, well, your best chance to get into air crew is to go overseas. So I grabbed the first draft I could overseas. And when I got overseas, then I remustered. I went to get remustered. Of course, there was no chance of getting in as a pilot, so I remustered to air gunner. And in the meantime, they said, well, in order for you to, before we go in training as an air gunner, you better get some experience on guns. So they put me in the armament section where they were working with guns. And eventually I wrote a trade board and got a grouping in armament. And, of course, the air gunner thing never did come up, and then the second front broke out and everything was canceled, and so we went away to France. But that's basically how I got in as an armor.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I never went to trade school, I just learned it on the job.
Right, firsthand, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. So you did most of your training as an armor, well, in the UK then?
Oh yeah, all of it.
All of it then, right. Tell me, take me through an average day at training camp.
Well, of course, the basic training was in Manipur in Toronto.
Right.
And of course, I never went to trade school, so that was the only basic training I had really, and that was mostly all just, just the basics of military life.
Mm-hmm.
Get up at 6 in the morning and hit the parade square and go to breakfast, and then hit the parade square again. You spent most of your time doing marching and stuff like that, getting it, and and rifle drill.
Oh, I see.
That type of thing. Just a basic training.
Right. And then what about when you were doing the armorer's training? What sort of...
Well, we just got up and went to the job.
Basically, right?
Yeah. And started, worked with another armorer, taking the guns out, dismantling them, learning the different pieces and what had to be done, and put them back together again, install them back in the aircraft, and
right.
Set your firing patterns. And
how do you do that?
You use a periscope down the barrel of the gun, and then out in front, they set up a big. It's on a stand with different spots on it for each gun, okay. And then you could adjust the mounts and look down the barrel and put your guns on these spots that were on this stand out in front. And this was a predetermined pattern that they had, somebody that knew what they were doing, I guess, done it, so that you got the best concentration of fire at a certain distance.
I see.
And they were all angled a little towards in, so that when they converged, you got the pattern again, going back out the other side.
Right. Wow. Well, pretty
and
interesting.
then once when a major overhaul was done, then we had to do what they called a butt test. And they taxied it out to an area and jacked it up at flying level. Mm-hmm. And then we all had to sit on the tail while it fired the guns at flying level with the aircraft at about 1,800 RPM and fired the guns into what they call a butt, which was a sand pile.
Oh, okay. To see if it's working.
To test the guns.
Wow. Huh. So tell me about your journey across the Atlantic.
I went over in February 1942. And, the sea was wild.
Pretty.
Oh, it was rough. And there was 2 troop ships and 2 destroyers. And we encountered German submarines on the way over. And we had to start dropping depth charges. And we got one of the subs. There was an oil, at least they said there was an oil slick came up. We never got, they didn't, at least nothing seemed to be fired at us, but we were dropping depth charges. We had depth charges on our old, on the old scow I was on.
You were on an old civilian ship then, or?
Yeah, it was an old Cunard White Star. It was a peacetime ship. I think it accommodated 500 or 600 passengers. In peacetime, there were 6,000 of us on it.
6,000?
Yeah.
Pretty packed in there.
Oh,
easy money.
They didn't have enough hammocks to go around, so I had to sleep on a bench that was about just about a foot wide, so you could just lay on your back with your feet on the floor. That's how we slept.
Wow. Get pretty tired. What was it like arriving at your station in the UK?
I landed at Greenwich, Scotland, and then they put us on a train and shipped us down to Bournemouth. Mm-hmm. We were in Bournemouth for a couple of weeks, and then they shipped us to another holding unit at Hastings. And from there I went to a place called, out to my first base there, an old RAF base at Odium in Hampshire, Northern Hampshire, just south of London.
Okay. And what was it like being in England? Did you find you got along well with the locals?
Well, pretty much. We had some conflict with them, which was unfortunate, because they're a great race of people to put up with what they had to put up with, with all the American and Canadian servicemen thrashing around the place, But I never had any trouble. I had relatives in Scotland, so.
Did you visit them on leave sometimes?
Yeah, I still have. In fact, my grandmother was still alive.
Oh, okay.
Still living in Maybeau, where my father lived.
Really?
Yeah. I saw the old house my father lived in. Yeah. In Maybeau.
Okay. Well, that was kind of a good experience for you then.
And just out of Ayr, the city of Ayr, there was an old castle sitting right on the Firth of Clyde called Greenan Castle. It had tumbled down a bit, And the village, the farming village where I was brought up, was named Greenan after that old castle.
Oh, really?
One of my uncles named it.
Lots of Scottish there.
Yeah, a lot of Scottish in there.
So, when did you go over to the continent?
Let's see, D-Day plus 6, so it'd be the 12th of June, 44.
That you went over. And what was your involvement over on the continent then?
Well, I was with an advance party, and we drove our own workshops. We had our own workshops in they were old English trucks called Crosleys. They were a big old 4-cylinder truck with a top speed of about 40 miles an hour if you could go downhill. And we loaded them on a barge at Southampton, and went across, and then I had to drive off the barge in the water up the beach and into some trees, because our Spitfires were flying off of mesh, and the mesh was laid. It was about 4-inch square mesh that was just laid down right on the ground, and that's what the runway was made out of, and it wasn't there yet. So we just kind of lived under our trucks for about 3 days, waiting for the engineers to finish putting the mesh down before the aircraft arrived.
Oh, right. Yeah. And would they have been the Royal Canadian Engineers doing that sort of thing? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. And so 6 days after D-Day, what was the environment like there?
Well, we only had, I suppose, at that time, maybe 10, 15 miles inland. Mm-hmm. We were just around a place called Bayou, short just this side of which was on the beach side of Caen, and there was quite extensive resistance along that area at that time. So it was a little hectic. They didn't bother us much in the daytime. At night they used to come over all the time because they were trying to I suppose get rid of the shipping that was going on down in the bay. Like they were using the battleships. They were using them for artillery. Big English battleship. The 16-inch guns were boom, boom. They were using them for artillery, and the Air Force was flying up and down, trying to keep the beach clear, and because they were unloading all sorts of equipment.
Right.
And that's what Jerry was after.
Right.
They didn't bother our little airfield much there. I don't even know whether they knew it was there or not. They didn't bother it too much. Although every night you had to get up. Every night, because they came at 12 o'clock midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning, religiously. You could hear those Messerschmitts coming. And of course then the anti-aircraft fire would start going. So we'd have to get out of our tent and we built ourselves a little slip trench. We had to put a cover on it to keep the shrapnel coming down the sweat door.
Oh, I see.
The driving bands off the shells and whatnot would tear holes in the tent when it came down. So as soon as we heard those aircraft coming, we'd get an underground.
Not much sleep, eh?
No, then you get you just get back to sleep again, and the 2 o'clock rate.
Right. Crazy. So what were the civilians like in France? Did you see much of them?
Oh yeah, not in that area too much. It was where we landed was really a farm area. Mm-hmm. And, the farm people, they were tickled to death to see us. They were sick and tired. They were, the Germans had taken Britain all of their livestock and all this, so they were delighted to see the Allies come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what about campaigns during the war? Were you directly involved in any? I mean, you must have been involved in some if you were in France at the time of the D-Day.
Well, of course, we had 3 squadrons, and one 400 squadron, that was what we called our Bluebird squadron. They weren't camouflaged at all. They were a pale blue. They were waxed, and they had no armament whatsoever. They just had cameras, and so. And then 430 Squadron had cameras and guns, and 414 Squadron the same.
So all 3 squadrons you were working on, is that right?
I started up with 400 Squadron and wound up with 414 Squadron. Because as soon as they took the armament out of 400 Squadron, they didn't need armors anymore. They had one armor. All he done was look after the officers' sidearms. So they only had the one armor left. they transferred the rest of us to 414 or 430 squad.
Oh, I see.
And I went to 414 squad.
So you guys were like reconnaissance then?
That's exactly what we were.
Right.
39, in fact, that was our unit, was called 39 Recce Wing. 39 Reconnaissance Wing.
And so what was the job of the 39
They
reconnaissance
took
wing?
pictures every day. We took pictures of, we took all the pictures first of all, for the D-Day landings. We took all the pictures for that. And, each day they took the pictures, and then our photographic section developed them, and then they were turned over to the Army liaison officers who could pinpoint all the gun emplacements and where everything was. And they took another pictures the next day, and they see where they moved to. And so by the time we went to cross the Rhine into Germany, they knew where everything was on the other side of the Rhine. So that we didn't cross, or the paratroopers went in first. We could watch that from where we were. All the paratroopers went in, and then we crossed the Rhine on Bailey bridges. But that was our basic job, was taking pictures for the Army.
Right. So you weren't just in France then? You were in
Germany, France, Belgium, Holland, and Germany.
Right. And did you find each country a little different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Belgium, well, they were all good. Holland was our serviceman's second home, the Canadians.
What was that like?
Oh, they're beautiful people. The Netherlands people. They were, and still are. If you go over there and tell them you're a Canadian ex-serviceman, they just treat you wonderfully.
Really, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've been back 3 times.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Tell me about your uniform. What would it have looked like, and what supplies did you carry every day, sort of?
Well, we just wound up after we got the continent. We didn't have a dress uniform. We just wore battle dress, bomber jacket and pants with sweaters. And it wasn't any protocol, We didn't have parades and whatnot once we got to France. Everybody was worried about what the job was getting done rather than spit and polish. So we didn't have any of that.
Right. Did you wear overalls or anything like that too, or no?
No. We weren't too like the American. They had ball caps and all sorts of work clothes and whatnot. We pretty well we had one uniform we worked in and another battle dress in better shape if you happen to go out at night.
Right. I see. So tell me about living conditions then at war. Living conditions, eating arrangements, those sort of things.
And on the continent, you just eat sitting on the ground.
Right.
When I first hit Normandy, I lived on just iron rations. There was a little box of stuff that gave you all dehydrated stuff in it, and you had a little thing you could light up, and what do they call that? It's a kind of a capsule.
Oh yeah.
Canned heat, they called it.
Oh, okay.
And you took the lid off and you could light it up, and there was a little thing you sat on it. You could put your mess tin on and cook up some oatmeal or all this dried garbage they had in this little box. We had that that lasted us 3 days. Then they brought in some corned beef, cheese, and hardtack, and we had that for a while till the mess tent got set up. But the mess tent, they just cooked in it. We eat wherever we.
Oh, really? You didn't eat in the tent?
No, it's just sat on the ground.
And what kind of food did you have?
It wasn't great. It was all in big Dixies. You get potatoes, a lot of peas, and it was kind of a mush. They were all a lot of it was dehydrated stuff, you know, that was all soaked up again. I remember, I'll never forget these peas. You couldn't have to wash them down. They were kind of like a thick mix of concrete.
Meat?
And the potatoes. You got some mutton once in a while and some beef.
Yeah. And then sleeping arrangements, was that in a tent?
Tents, yeah.
Always.
6 to a tent.
6 to a tent, yeah. Okay. Tell me about going on leave during your service.
Well, in England, when we were in the UK, we used to get like 9 days every 6 months, I guess it was.
Hmm.
And then, but you got a day off a week. And occasionally you got 2 days off. I forget just how that worked now. But you got one day off a week. And usually we go to London or something for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that a neat experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love London.
Yeah. Still?
Yeah, I still go back there every once in a while.
What about longer leaves? Where would you go? Like, say you're off for a week or 9 days.
Sometimes I'd go to my relatives in Scotland.
Right.
Other times, some of us would just get together and go to Edinburgh or Inverness or Glasgow or, usually we went to Scotland.
Did you, eh?
Yeah.
Why is that?
There wasn't the concentration of troops that there was in, when you got up around Edinburgh and Glasgow and most places, it was mostly all just servicemen on leave.
Mm.
So it wasn't quite as congested, you know. You could get into the, they had these places for servicemen to sleep, you know, and there for a couple of shillings you could get a bed. Whereas in London, we used to sleep in Hyde Park a lot of the time.
Oh, really?
Just dig the leaves out and lay down and pull a pile of leaves back over us. Because lots of times you couldn't get into the service clubs; they were too crowded.
Right, right. So that must have been an experience just doing that, eh? What about like mail and things like that? Mail service. Did you?
Their mail service was good.
Yeah.
Most of it came to the Canadian Army Post Office. They had a division of the Canadian Army. Well, I forget what they called it. But they handled all the mail, and it was then shipped out to the different units. It was good. We had a good service.
And would you get pretty excited about mail?
Yeah, it was always nice to get a letter. Yeah. My mother wrote. She wrote a lot oftener than I did. Every once in a while I'd get a bunch of card just drop a card, she'd say, and just to let her know that I'm still around.
Right.
I'm a terrible letter writer. I haven't gotten any better since either.
Take me through an average day on the continent. What would you do?
Well, there was nothing to do other than just work on the aircraft, if there was aircraft to work on. Otherwise, we had a football we used to throw around, and somebody found some old lacrosse sticks, and we used to monkey around with that, because there was really no place to go.
Oh, really?
So
social life?
No, not really.
Right.
Not in Normandy anyway.
Mm-hmm.
After we got up further, I spent the winter of 1944 in Eindhoven,
right,
in Holland. Well, and then we went to town at night there. There was, there's things you could do in there. There was concerts. Sometimes there'd be a concert we could go to. Or there was a little dance hall or something like that, you could go to.
Was that, wasn't Eindhoven attacked once?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like really badly. Were you there during that time? Give me,
they strafed us steady for 30 minutes. on New Year's Day, 1945. I was sitting, the aircraft our aircraft were all out, gone to Germany to attack something. So we had really no defense left, and they just came. And the few aircrafts we had left, they burned them up. They stayed there for about a half hour and strafed us, and they were pretty well out of ammunition. And when they were going to go back, our aircraft were coming back. And they still had some ammunition left, so we had seen a few good dogfights. They shot down a few of the German aircraft.
Right.
There's quite a few of them.
Right. Were you ever injured or anything during the war?
No.
No.
The closest I ever got to being injured was that day. We had a little armament shack with a blast wall around it, and I was laying between, another guy and I were laying between the building and the blast wall while they were strafing. And they dove in and just run a pattern right across the armament shack, and it went right out the other end, and Mitchell and I were laying head to head like this, and the bullets went between us.
Between your heads?
Yeah.
No kidding.
And there was a chunk of brick bounced against my cheek and skinned it a little. That's the closest I got to being injured.
Wow. Wow. How were people in the armed forces dealt? How did they deal with injured soldiers? Do you know? Did you know of any who got injured, or?
Yeah. In fact, we lost some guys. We lost a few that day, and a few injured. Oh, we had good medical service, which, as far as we were concerned, because we had our own medical people there, and of course, anything that was that they couldn't handle, like in serious stuff, they were then sent by ambulance. We had our own ambulances, and they were taken to one of the big field hospitals. It was run by the Canadian Medical Corps.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. So in terms of liberation, you must have participated in a few different countries being liberated then, hey? Or do you feel not?
The day just before the war ended, 414 Squadron was slated to go to Denmark, and so we were laying beside the runway, waiting for and there was a DC-3. They were ready for us, load us up to go to Denmark. And just about that time, there was a German aircraft came in, and he was rocking his wings, signifying that he was surrendering. So he landed, and there was a German pilot that was getting out, you know. And then before we ever got on the aircraft, they come in and told us that the war was over.
No kidding, eh?
Yeah. So there was a big celebration that night, although there was no place to go. We just sat there. A bunch of guys got a fire going out in the square and started burning furniture and lockers and one thing and another. And had a victory fire. They even pushed a truck in. And then the next couple of days later, they sent us back to 39 Recce Wing again at Lunenburg, and that's where I was then until I came home.
Right.
Lunenburg,
Okay.
in Germany.
Right. Is there any main experience that stands out the most about your time on the continent?
Well, that New Year's Day was pretty vivid in my mind. And the night before, oddly enough, a friend of mine and I were downtown, in town, and we'd escorted a couple of young ladies home from this dance hall, but their parents were watching pretty close, so we left there, and on the way up the street, there was a sniper in a church tower up there, started shooting at us. That was fairly,
I bet. So even if you were in town, there was still Germans in there?
Well, not German, but German. There'd be the odd German sympathizer.
Oh, right.
It wouldn't be a military person. I never did see. They finally got this person out of this church tower, but I don't think he was a like he wouldn't be a German soldier.
Right.
He'd just be a sympathizer or maybe a special agent of some kind. I'm not sure.
I see. Okay, so you talked a little bit about VE Day and the celebrations. You had a victory fire and stuff. Tell me a little more about that. What sort of feelings did you have when you found out?
Well, of course, everybody was relieved. It was all over, and you were still alive, and you knew that you weren't be far from going back home again. Right. So we were pretty excited about that.
But you mentioned that you went to Lunenburg after VE Day.
Yeah.
Is that right? So how long did you stay there before you went home?
Oh, I was probably there probably close to a month.
And what were you doing there?
Nothing. Just getting up, eating, and really nothing. No, there was no more.
Nothing for the RCAF to do.
No, they were starting to kind of pack things up, but I was out of there before really that even got going full tilt. And when they sent me back to England, and there was a holding unit in Torquay, which is down on the south coast. It was a summer resort on the south coast. Right. And so I was there for 3 weeks, and then they loaded me on a train up to Greenock, Scotland again, and put me on the Ile de France. I came home.
What was it like coming home?
Beautiful trip coming home.
Was it?
World Atlantic was just like a lake.
That was the summer, I guess, right?
Yeah, July it was calm. And because it took me 9 days to go over, it took about 5 days to come back.
Right, you weren't zigzagging anymore.
No, I just
right.
Come straight across.
And did you go straight into Halifax or New York?
Halifax. And then
And what was that like, stepping onto home soil?
there were people there, and of course people from Nova Scotia and some of the Maritimes that had some idea that some of their people were coming home were there waiting for people to get off. So people that lived in that area, they let them off first. And then the officers, of course, they got off. Then they unloaded us and onto a train and took us up to Lachine, Quebec.
Okay.
To a holding unit up there. And we were there for a couple of days, and then they sent us to our respective homes.
Oh, and you just kind of like a milk run train type thing?
You were on the regular passenger service.
Okay.
They give you your ticket and meal tickets for the dining car.
Oh, I see. What sort of things were provided for you upon returning home?
Well, I didn't play it very smart, of course, because you want to get out, do something, and they offered you a chance to go to university or finish your education, and offered you many things, and I said, no. So I just left, signed off, and then I tried to acquire some farmland, and that seemed to be taking so long. I gave up on that and moved to Calgary and went to work.
And what did you do for work?
I traveled for Massey Ferguson Farm Implement Company.
Oh, okay.
I was district manager for them for about from 48, I guess, till about 1960. And I went with Case Company.
So you were a farmer boy, eh?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's how you got into the farm.
That's how I got into the farm implement.
Oh, I see. What was it like coming home? What were the people like? How did you adjust?
Well, it takes a while.
It does, eh?
Yeah, it takes quite a while. Some people probably do it better than others. I had some trouble with it. You're all of a sudden you've gone from being with 2,000 men to being pretty well on your own, and riding a farm tractor. I couldn't handle it. I went back to the city.
Really, eh?
Yeah.
You need to be around people?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've heard people say that not being told what to do or given direction was really hard.
Well, I didn't. I suppose that would have something to do with it too. Maybe, although when my father was still around, he gave some orders. But it was the solitude of the thing that I couldn't seem to handle.
Really, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quiet, you're used to being with guys laughing and joking all day long. I found that hard to get straightened out.
Right. What were people like towards you?
Oh, well, people were good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Everyone was really appreciative.
Yeah.
And stuff.
And still are.
Yeah.
My youngest brother phones me every 11th of November.
That's good, eh?
Because he's 11 years younger than me, so he wasn't in the forces yet. But he phones me every 11th of November to thanks me for what we've done.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you think that veterans have been treated well then?
I have no complaint, really.
No. Yeah.
No, in fact, they treat us well now, better than they ever did.
Yeah, eh? Yeah. And any veterans organizations that you belong to?
I belong to Legion.
You belong to Legion, yeah.
I have for years.
Yeah.
I still belong to Legion in New Westminster. Number 2.
Oh, you do, eh?
Yeah.
And what sort of support do they provide you with?
Well, I've never asked them for any, because there's people with a lot greater needs than mine. So I've never, leaned on them for anything. But they're there. They're there if you need them. And in the event that you need something, they'll do what they can, what's within their means financially. It's getting tougher all the time because they're getting fewer members.
What about, you mentioned you've been to Holland a couple of times since the war. Did you go over for the 50th anniversary celebration?
I was there for the 50th. I was there before that, and I've been there once. I was there twice. I guess that's the last time I was there, was the 50th. I was there twice before that.
What was that like?
Oh, that was great. It was great. They really put on a deal for us.
What sort of things?
Yeah, I went to parades in Apeldoorn, Wageningen, Bergen van Zoom, and great deal. They put on a real deal. People by the thousands came out to that big one in Apeldoorn. We started marching in threes, and by the time we got finished, we were marching single file because the crowds were so great.
Wow.
They have in Europe, they've never forgotten the oppression of that Nazi regime. And when we would go to the ceremonies at the various cemeteries, little kids like that, their parents bring them out to make sure they know what went on. And they've been very good that way of keeping the young people aware of what went on and how great freedom really is.
Yeah, okay.
I really respect them for that. They do a really good job of that.
And have you made a point of doing the same thing with your children?
Yeah, my grandchildren come to the parade in New Westminster to watch me walk with Legion on the 11th.
Right. And is that how you observe Remembrance Day then?
Every Remembrance Day. I go to the service at the Armories there in New West on 6th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there we go to the cenotaph and at the City Hall, and all the wreaths are laid. And then we do a march by on Royal Avenue.
Right.
And then you go down to the Legion. You go down to the Legion for the afternoon. There's lunch and
chat with the boys.
Chat about.
Do you still maintain contacts and friendships from the war years?
Yeah, there's only about 3 left. One lives in Chetwynd. Another one lives over in the island. I have another one in Invermere. Mm-hmm. And my best friend lives in Fort Erie, Ontario. And we alternate each year. We go visit him one year, he flies back out here the next year. We've been doing that now for 20 years.
Okay. Yeah, right on. That's good. Okay, well, I think that's probably about it for the interview. Unless you can think of something I might have missed.
No, that's it. That pretty well covers it, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Bone.
You're very welcome. Glad I could help.